So here's what we're going to want to do. We're going to want to take this background image. This is the background image we have, and we want to go ahead and just make a duplicate, and we can just copy and paste a duplicate, or there's a little keyboard shortcut in Photoshop which is Command J, and it's just going to make a copy for you. It's just kind of a nice quick shortcut. And I want to drag this as the top layer. I want this to be above the logo. So now we're going to use blending modes to let certain pixels behind this top layer through, so it'll show the reflections but also show the black underneath coming through. So let's go ahead and cycle through our different blending mode options by going to our blending mode area in our layers panel, and let's see what looks the best. So you can already see that lighten, it almost looks a little bit better because it kind of adds that shine and lighting that happens when you have a reflective surface like a coffee mug. It's shiny, it's got kind of a gloss finish, but it's a little intense, so there's going to be some better blending modes we can use. That looks a little washed out, but that's okay. Just scroll down and try to find the right one. And that one might hit the spot. This one's called hard light. So we're going to use hard light for this, but look, we just did that one quick little change and tweak, and it's letting a little bit of that spoon reflect through, so it looks like the logo is printed on top of the surface as opposed to just being placed on top. It looks like it's a part of the material now. So I'm going to toggle this on and off so you can see the difference. That was before and this is after. Huge difference here. You can even reduce the opacity of this top layer to maybe make the effect not quite as strong, so it's not as washed out. We could just reduce the opacity. You can really change anything you want here. This layer will always remain on top of the logo to create this effect. So you can call this glare, you can call it highlights, whatever you want to call it. We're going to call it glare right now, or reflection. Let's call it reflection. So people would know when they look at your mock-up, or when you go back to revisit your mock-up, exactly what that layer does for the mock-up. So here's the problem we have when you have backgrounds with mock-up. So we put this photo on top, and it does a great job at making anything we place on here feel like it's a part of the mug. But we don't want it to affect the background. We only want it to be on this object right here. Because notice how the background changes, we only want the mug to be affected. So there's a little kind of shortcut to be able to clip this to just the logo area, because that's all we want to be affected with this top image with the blending mode. So I'm going to select my little blending mode layer, my little reflection layer, and I want to clip it to this logo. This is all I want it to be on top of, because I don't want the rest of the background to be affected. So I'm going to hold down the Option key, and if you're on a Windows, I'm going to show you what key to press right here. And I'm just holding it down. I haven't let go yet, and I'm just going to click with my mouse or my trackpad, whatever you're using. Just click once, right down on that layer, see that little arrow, and boom, it is clipped on there. So that's how you make a clipping mask. So now when I toggle it on and off, the background doesn't change or shift. It only is clipped to that area. It's clipped down to the layer below. And we're going to be doing this over and over again. So don't worry too much if you're still like, what? That was complicated. It took me a little bit of time to get used to this process at first, so do not worry. So now when I go ahead and change my layer, I double click on my smart object to switch out the logo. I'm going to switch out the logo here. Go ahead and put my coffee and cream logo in there instead. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. Go ahead and close out my window and save it. It's going to automatically populate. And you'll notice that it has the nice reflection in there too, so that just looks so much better. And since it's clipped, so this top reflection layer with the hard light blending mode is clipped, it's only going to show up on that layer. I can toggle that on and off. Huge difference here. And you can see how quickly you can apply logos to objects by using the same method of having the layer on top and using a blending mode, and then just kind of clipping it on the layer that you want to affect. This is very simple. It takes about 5 minutes to do this. You can create mock-ups super quick, especially when you have your own photography or when you download photography from a stock website of a t-shirt. We're going to be doing that a little bit later. We're going to be taking a t-shirt image and just quickly doing the same process over and over and applying the same look to add a little bit more realism to everything. This is a photo my buddy Jeremy Hazel took in his photo studio, and I think some of you guys got to kind of see and go through that process. This is the raw image right here. I went ahead and just saved it as a simple JPEG so we can bring it into Photoshop and edit it right here. So I'm going to bring in a JPEG, and this is going to be supplied to you in the Coffee Cup project folder in the main resources downloadable zip file. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this unedited photo, and we're going to see what we can do to kind of make it prepped and make it ready to have a logo applied to it. So let's go ahead and unlock it, and let's apply some adjustments to it. So I'm going to go to our adjustment panel. You can also access your adjustments up here by going to Image and Adjustments. This is basically where I'm getting them all. So if you have an older version of Photoshop, that might be the route that you have to take. So let's do the same thing. I almost always use brightness and contrast to kind of do some small tweaks. I would like to have that a little brighter, the contrast a little bit more, higher contrast, because right now if I reduce the contrast it looks really washed out, and I want to have higher contrast so I can isolate the cup a little bit better. That's exactly what we're going to be doing next. So higher contrast helps Photoshop pick out or crop out the image for us. So we're just going to increase the contrast quite a bit. And when you increase the contrast, you're increasing you're darkening the shadows and you're brightening the highlights. Let's see what else we can do here. We can mess with our curves a little bit, and we can bring out, I'd like to darken my shadows a little bit. So I'm going to go on the curve and I'm going to bring down my shadows and make them even darker. I'm going to bring them down. Down is dark, and maybe I can brighten my highlights. So it's very much similar to contrast, but you have a lot more control when you do it with curves. So just kind of make it, just see how small of a change that is. And I can toggle this on and off to see kind of the effect that it had on the mock-up. So now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and make this final. I feel like I don't want to go back and adjust any of these. I feel good about that as a final image. I want to isolate. So what we want to do is we want to combine all of these layers. So I'm just going to click at the top layer, hold down Shift, going to click down here. It's going to go ahead and just select all my layers. And I'm going to do a little command shortcut called Command E, and it's just going to combine all of those adjustment layers into one layer. Or you can go back and just right click and just merge layers. Just right down to the merge layers. Or you can just do Command E, or I'll do the Windows shortcut key showing you on the screen right now. So now we just have a simple image that's just been brightened. The contrast has been increased. So now we're going to have an easier time isolating this from the background, because what I want to do is I want to isolate the mug, and I want to be able to put it on my own background. I don't want to have the background here. I also want to be able to change the color of the mug too, and so to be able to do that, you got to be able to cut the image out, or at least kind of get that image isolated. We can go ahead and try the new object selection tool and see how Photoshop automatically cuts it out for us. So just up here to the object selection tool right here in your toolbar. It's only available in the last couple of years in Photoshop, so I think 2018, 19, and 20. And it kind of did a good job, and we could just go back and kind of clean it up and cut that out a little bit better. Which you'll notice it's not really doing the best job because it's kind of jagged here. And there's a reason why it's not cutting out really good. We can also do the magnetic lasso tool, which is kind of my go-to to manually cut things out. So I'm just going to do my magnetic lasso tool. But you'll notice it's doing an okay job, but it's kind of jagged. And that's because you have a white mug on a light gray background. And so it's having a hard time figuring out which pixels go to the background, because when you zoom in you almost see a lot of gray in these pixels right here, so it's getting confused and not being able to define that line. So sometimes I like to manually cut out objects using the pen tool. So I'm going to get the pen tool and just manually cut this guy out. So I go over the pen tool a lot in my graphic design masterclass and other classes I teach, and it is a really hard tool to master, but once you master it, you really get the hang of it. Hopefully you're at a skill level now where the pen tool is not as challenging as it used to be. So I'm just clicking and holding to get the curves. And you'll notice coming around this curve, I needed to kind of click and hold down and get the curvature pen tool, kind of start to work my way up. So switching between that curvature pen tool and pen tool is very helpful. And this is actually a hard one because we took the photo ourselves. It's not like this perfect already edited photo. This is just a photo straight from our camera. So it does require a little bit more work than one that's already been professionally cut out or one that's on a pure white background. So that's kind of our basic selection. Let's just make sure we kind of even that out a little, smooth that out, I guess. Let me go ahead and get the pen tool. There we go. Just trying to smooth that out as best as we can. So that's going to be cut out a whole lot better than any of those automatic tools are going to be able to do that for you. So I can go ahead and do a little trick here. So I want to isolate this. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go down to make a selection. It's going to take the path that I just created with the pen tool. It's going to make it a selection. Just go ahead and click on OK. Just like that. And I want to be able to punch that little center part out. So I might be able to just do that with the magic wand tool. I think it's enough contrast for me to easily select it. So I want to subtract the selection. So if you go up here, you can add to the selection, and this is going to subtract. And this might be review for a lot of you guys, and that's okay. So now it's on subtract. So now if I click here, it's going to go ahead and punch that out. It didn't do a good job because this is a really tough photo to work. I really gave you guys a tough photo to work with, but that's okay. It's good to have a challenge when you're starting to learn. It really helps push you further. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to take the pen tool and we're going to have to draw another path.